welcome to the very first edition of the Kings of Chat Style. I am Mr. Warren Hayes, one of your co-hosts, the other one being none other than Wilfred of the Wilfred Watches program. Wilfred, how you doing? Oh, we're doing fine. We're doing fantastic. Welcome. This is a new podcast that we're starting today, aren't we, Wilfred? We're starting something new. We want to break out a little bit of the typical molds. Wilfred and I, we've been...
Want to break free!
Wilfred and I wanted to work together for a while now, despite some, issues that may plague our relationship. But no, we wanted to actually try something out, do something where we would talk about wrestling, maybe outside of the usual formats that exist, maybe outside of the usual topics as well that are discussed. Try something new, and mostly invite people on here to join us. Isn't that right, Wilfred?
I am so happy to have some real star power on the show for the very first episode.
Yes.
And I mean, when I talk star power, I think of Smark to Death podcast.
You do?
And I think of Anthony up in Waco, Texas, #Go Baylor.
Isn't that right, Wilfred?
Anthony has joined us for this first episode, #Chat Style. Warren, who's your friend on this chat that you've brought along with us today?
I have brought along a friend, dare I say, a colleague as
not
well.
Today.
Kristen Ashly, who is the editor-in-chief over at Diva Dirt. She also contributes over at Fightful.com and at DailyDDT.com over on the Fan-Sided Network. I am super happy that she came here today, not only because she's smart, has some great insights, but it will be nice to not have just a dude party going on here. So that's also good. I want to welcome you both, Anthony and Kristen, to the show.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Now, before we go on, Anthony, you're one of the co-hosts of the Smark to Death podcast. You guys have really blown up like something fierce. I think you guys started in January, and you've become one of the most popular fan podcasts related to wrestling out there. You do a lot of stuff. Tell us a bit about what you do. You and what's the other guy's name? Kyle's
the other guy's name. Yeah, so Smart to Death we like to think, is a little different wrestling show. We're both big professional sports fans too, just like we are professional wrestling. So we model our show after some popular shows you may see on ESPN. So we run down topics, rumors, and predictions like everybody else, but we do it over 3 rounds. So it's pretty cool. But tonight we'll be live after War Games. Tomorrow we'll be live after Survivor Series at youtube.com/smarttodeath or twitch.tv/smarttodeath.
There you go. That's fantastic. And Kristen, you on your end, you're a writer. You write things. You put words into sentences that can be comprehended by the typical person who reads.
The unwashed masses.
And you just recently moved into this position of editor-in-chief at Diva Dirt. Tell us all about your stuff.
Yes, I did recently just get dropped into it. Well, I asked for it.
I
did ask for it. Diva Dirt is a site based on women's wrestling. That's our niche product. So we focus solely on wrestling as it relates to women's wrestling. Right now we're just trying to evolve like women's division has, because there's been in the past some clearly, I don't know, the site needs evolving. So I kind of put out there on Twitter that I was looking for like a corner of the internet to just fangirl all over the place about women's wrestling. And the owner of Diva Dirt had contacted me and said, "We want you And then I had a phone conversation with Jason, and he just was like, we want what you write. So it's been a slow build, I'll be honest. It takes a while to build a site to what it needs to be, but and I'm working really hard to represent women's wrestling as best as I can.
Well, I have no fear that you're going to do a fantastic job, because you already do a fantastic job over at Daily DDT and at Fansided. So good on you.
Here, here.
Thanks.
Dilly.
No.
None of that, please.
No, none of that.
It's still too early yet. This is still the first episode. Let's not drive people away just yet, Wilfred.
I've been up since 4 watching New Japan Pro Wrestling this morning, so I'm wide awake.
How was it, by the way?
It was
In
it
10
was
seconds
decent.
or less.
It was fairly decent. Nothing mind-blowing, but decent.
All right. Very good. To kick things off, just to get everyone warmed up, Wilfred, we came up with an idea where, well, why don't you talk about it? It seems to me I'm talking a lot.
I love to hear your sultry tone. So not a worry. So we thought we would have each of our guests, including myself and Warren, bring to you a match of the past month that we've seen or we've watched online, and we share that with you. That way we could all kind of have something to watch in the near future that we should go back in the archives and watch, or maybe watch this week when things are slow, to really enjoy pro wrestling from all sorts of different places in the world. So what we did is we all are bringing a match to the table, and we're going to chat about it, hashtag chat style, about a match that we've seen this past month. And I don't know, Warren, you want me to kick it off?
Yeah, you're so social. Hashtag chat style. You just
It's
keep
trending
talking about it.
worldwide.
You're so social. It's crazy. Yeah, like Wilfred said. Yeah, like Wilfred said, it's not necessarily a match that happened within the last month. It could, or as long as it's a match that we came across over the past 30 days or so. You know, just something fresh to our memory. But yeah, Wilfred, why don't you? I'll let you handle this part.
Okay, all right. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to the folks in the YouTube chat. So thanks for hanging out with us. People like John and Darren are already in there involving themselves, so thank you. So my match this month that I really, really enjoyed was a little ditty by Progress Wrestling. They, of course, are the hottest British wrestling organization going right now. They have a great cooperation with deal with NXT and NXT UK. And their most recent event before broadcasting this show was Chapter 77, and it's called Pumpkin Spice Progress, which is so fitting, I think, personally. And the main event was their heavyweight champion, Walter, the giant Austrian, taking on Zack Sabre Jr. for the world title. This was a technical, brutal, chop heavy, a lot of mat wrestling. It was just an exquisite match and display of what I think of wrestling when I hear Brit Rest or British wrestling. It was back and forth. The fans were cringing at times. They were chanting. They were going crazy. It was a beautiful match. Zack Sabre Jr. had won the Strong Style 16 tournament this past summer, actually beating Cassius Ohno in the final. So he has been waiting and waiting to get his title shots. Zack Sabre Jr. failed, unfortunately, as Walter retained the title. But this went about 30 minutes. It was breathtaking. A lot of the reviews that you'll read online, like theindycorner.com, all agree that it was one of the better Progress matches that have ever taken place. So that's why I picked that match. It was tremendous, and I can't wait to see where Walter's title reign goes from here.
Would you say that it was a bit of a, well, I mean, no, it is a bit of a clash of styles, but I guess they meshed really well. Absolutely. If you really liked it.
Well, you know how you bring a big guy down, talking about ring psychology, is you go after the legs, you go after the limbs, the parts that are a little weaker. And Zack Sabre Jr. is the best at doing that. And it was fantastic to see the interactions between Zack Sabre Jr. showing his cockiness and his confidence and then getting chopped the hell out of the ring. It was a brilliant clash of styles. It was a lovely match, and it really had that sport feel to it, which I find I love about Pro Wrestling Noah and New Japan Pro Wrestling at times, is that I love that real combat feel to a wrestling match.
Well, that's really cool. And do you how long has Walter had the belt? Does anyone know?
He just won it in the past few months, I believe. So he hasn't had it for too long just yet. So his reign is just kind of starting.
It's still fairly recent.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you
for that, Wilfred.
I can't wait to hear what our guests have picked.
And they're waiting. Kristen, why don't you go ahead?
Me?
Yes, as opposed to the other Kristen in the chat right now.
I also go with Kristen.
Yeah, his middle name's Kristen, so
That's
we're
exactly
confused.
right.
Really?
Right. In the South, they call you by your middle name often, so we're confused. Right. Okay.
Well, I never called Anthony Kristen. I don't know why I'd start today. Okay, go ahead, Kristen Ashly, editor-in-chief of Diva Dirt. Holy shit, then we'll be really clear.
Okay, thank you. So let's take you back a few years to circa August 2015. My match of every month, actually of every minute of every day, is the NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, Sasha versus Bayley. It was for the women's championship, and I mean, I don't know that I've met anybody that hasn't seen that match. It was pretty highly regarded as one of the best women's matches, I think, like ever. It was a co-main event. I believe the other main event was Balor versus Owens.
I think so.
Yep, ladder match.
Yeah. And it was a show of the year. I go back and I watched it this morning just to refresh myself, and I will not lie to you, I cried like a 2-year-old. Like, leading up to the situation, the whole match was that prior to it, 3 out of the 4 horsewomen, so Becky, Charlotte, and Sasha, had all been pulled up to the main rosters, and Bayley was left behind. Mm-hmm. And that was like a big ripple in wrestling world. And I actually, this is the first time, not the first time, but this was pretty close to the beginning of when I started to even watch NXT, because I was just beginning to kind of get into wrestling. So I remember watching this live and just being blown away, and having my poor brother, explain to me what was going on.
Because he was the wrestling fan.
What's that?
Because he was the wrestling fan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not at the time, actually, a little bit prior to that. I'm pretty new, to be honest. My dad and my brother watched it, and they kind of brought me into the wrestling world. And my brother said, if you really want to watch some wrestling, let's watch NXT. And so I watched it live with them. And I mean, the match itself was so powerful. I mean, Sasha Banks was the heel at the time. Mm-hmm. And they didn't hold back punches. I mean, just, Bayley, you're pathetic, and you're never going to amount to anything. And Bayley was just this underdog champ who liked to hug. Yep. So, weird at the time. And so going into it, their technical talent, the match itself, the ability to keep everything fresh, and there's nothing really repetitive. There's no real lag or downtime. Even when they were outside the ring, it wasn't for very long. Even though Sasha could have been, there was no countouts. They didn't drag the match on for very long with big pauses. It was really just one after another move. What really stood out to me in the match was when Sasha Banks tried to do her bank statement, and then Bayley reversed it and did one on her. And I thought that was pretty clever and pretty tricky. She won with a belly to belly. Bayley did. Yep. But it was really intense. The crowd was into it, like hardcore into it. Even Graves, said, "This is the Divas Evolution," because at the time it was still the Divas division. And at the end, when Becky and Charlotte came rushing up, and then you get the hug when Banks breaks Kafabe and gives the hug, and it's just all over for me. I just cry and cry and cry, and you know that you're watching history at the time. Like, this is history. This is wrestling. I love going back and watching that stuff because it's really easy to get lost in WWE land and forget that they can wrestle. I mean, Sasha Banks and Bayley right now are not really being utilized, and so
not properly.
it's kind of nice to go back and get a refresher. Like, oh hey, they can wrestle despite what they're doing right now.
And I think, you said at first, it's probably one of the greatest women's matches of all time. I would even go as far as to say that this is one of the best wrestling matches, period.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, this had so much. It had so much emotion and talent going into it. Anthony, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Kristen said she's pretty new to wrestling, and I started around the same time. And actually, this match in particular is the one that kind of launched my whole obsession with a lot of different wrestling. But in particular, I'm actually pretty high on women's wrestling. I like it quite a bit, and like, this was kind of what got me back into it, was Sasha versus Bayley. It wasn't Finn, it wasn't Kevin Owens. Interesting enough.
But still, I mean, understandably, anyone who started watching wrestling thanks to this match, man, what a treat. Well, hey, thanks for that, Kristen. And Anthony, since you're already warmed up vocally now, why don't you go ahead with your match?
Yeah, so if you guys listen to the show, then you probably know that preparation is not exactly our thing. So I have a match. I'm not as well versed as Wilfred and Kristen as far as telling you why I liked it, but my match was from last week. It was from Global Wars, which for me, I'm big on those ROH New Japan crossover events. I like them a lot. I know that they don't typically mean anything, but I'm pretty big on just wrestling for the sake of wrestling, whether there's a story or not. So my match is Jeff Cobb versus Evil, which was just fantastic to me. I'm on this kick right now where I really like watching big guys wrestle each other. I think I'm turning into Vince McMahon slowly. So, but Evil is incredibly good, and he's someone that I've really started to like quite a bit. Him and Ishii from New Japan, and Jeff Cobb's newer to me as well. So seeing those two match up, Evil had a streak of showing up on ROH shows where he just doesn't lose. I think this was actually his first singles loss in an ROH ring. So that was going for it. Jeff Cobb's got this massive push, but they're both so incredibly athletic, especially for their size. Jeff Cobb is impressive beyond, what I expected him to be. The highlight for me was something I actually posted on Twitter, stole a little video while I was watching, was a suplex where Cobb just held him up for, I want to say like 10, 15 seconds. It felt like, it was probably 5, but it felt like forever. And the ending sequence was great, ending with Tour of the Islands. And my favorite call in wrestling right now is Ian Riccaboni saying aloha means goodbye as he hits his finisher, which is just great. I love that so much right now.
That was a tremendous match. I saw a lot of GIFs online about that encounter. I have yet to see it. I really like the hefty weight division, as JPQ named it in the YouTube chat. I love some big guys wrestling. So I'm glad that you're turning the corner, Anthony, on that.
You yourself is starting to you're starting to sound like Vince McMahon, Wilfred.
Well, it just kind of feeds through you, and it's a toxic virus that
you got him to watch SmackDown one time. One time.
It's corrupted me ever since. But we have one last person to chat with, and I want to hear what Warren's match of this past month was. Speaking about a women's match, Warren has a women's match from a previous generation to chat about. Which match did you bring to the table today, Warren?
Well, I was researching. I was rewatching actually some old pay-per-views for another gig I do over on Fightful Select, where we review some retro pay-per-views. And we came across, we did a review for Survivor Series 1994. Spoiler alert, not a good show. But during the
But you're
course
gonna
of...
talk about it.
What's that?
But you're gonna talk about it.
Well, I mean, look, let's put it this way. During the...
That's a 24-year-old spoiler.
I guess I should have been a little more careful. Well, let's put it this way. If you want to watch Survivor Series 1994, all the power to you. Just keep in mind that there is a Survivor Series match where Doink the Clown and 4 little clowns, or 3 little clowns, are up against Jerry the King Lawler and 3 little kings. So be forewarned. That's the kind of quality match you'll be looking for. No, but during the course of the match, they're talking about Alundra Blaze, and they were saying that she recently lost her match, the WWF Women's Championship over in Japan to Bull Nakano. I was like, all right, seems to me I've heard of this match. I'll go take a look at it. I'll go find it somewhere, and it's up on YouTube. It's easy to find. And it was astounding to me how great this match was. How these 2 women here were performing on a level that most of the men in North America couldn't even touch. Mm-hmm. They were doing incredible moves, high flying and very physical. Nakano strikes like a beast. Alundra Blaze had incredible kicks at the time. It was a really fantastic match. And on top of that, they did this at the Tokyo Dome. They called it was the Egg Dome, nicknamed back then. And it was amazing, because Alundra Blaze, she comes out. Her entrance was awesome. They had this incredibly huge ramp set up. And so Alundra Blaze's music hits. And there's a guy on a Harley who comes out. Then a guy on another Harley who comes out. Then another guy and another. There's like a dozen freaking Harleys that come up and line themselves on either side of the entrance. And then the final Harley comes out, and Alundra Blaze is sitting behind the guy with an American flag. It was spectacular, especially for the time. It was such a grandiose entrance. And as far as Bull Nakano goes, she's actually at Survivor Series 1994. She does a promo backstage. She's interviewed, right? And she's basically, this stone-faced. I don't know if you remember how WWF would portray her at the time, but she was very stone-faced, expressionless, She'd just stare straight into the camera, and she'd talk entirely in Japanese in a very droning voice kind of thing. But at her match against Blaze, she was just walking down the ramp. She had a huge smile on her face, waving to everyone in the audience. It was a really strange dichotomy in the way she was portrayed in Japan on one hand, and then over here in North America, where she was basically this stone-faced bull. Anyway, you should go check it out, because it's really a testament to how great the women were at the time, but just weren't given the room to grow, or at least, everyone had to wrestle Moolah style back then, fabulous Moolah style.
Warren,
a lot of hair pulling and shoving. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Warren, just to put it in context, the level, the quality of wrestling in 1994 in that match compared to, I just pulled up what was going on 2 months later in WCW at that same time period, and you had a match with Mr. T versus Kevin Sullivan in a 3-minute match.
Oh boy.
That's such a stark contrast of wrestling quality.
I want to jump in here too real quick and say that I'm glad that you pointed out the quality of women's wrestling in Japan in the 90s, because that's something that I battle with a lot when we talk about the women's evolution for WWE. It's like WWE, and that's fine. It's their company. They can write their own history, but they say we're evolving women's wrestling. Women's wrestling has been great for a long time.
Oh, for sure.
People just aren't watching it. Watch Stardom. Stardom is incredible. Just the gifts that you see on Twitter are unreal. Some of the stuff these women can do.
And just go back to 1988 again during the course of more retro stuff that I've been watching. Look at the Jumping Bomb Angels. Those girls were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
They really were. So that's mine. That's what you should go watch, folks. It was amazing.
That's a really diverse group of matches that we all brought to the table. I'm really excited to go back and actually check out this Sasha Bailey, because that just felt so special to me when I saw that. So yeah, I want to relive some of those NXT events. So yeah, really cool matches, guys. Thank you for bringing a little bit of context and such. Warren, we're gonna jump into our topics next.
Yes.
What's our first topic? Do you want me to pitch it, or what? How do you want to do this?
Oh no, you do it.
Okay.
I'm just sitting around pushing buttons here. That's my contribution, and it's not innuendo. I'm literally pushing buttons.
So we have a couple of topics that we're going to bring to the table today in this very first episode of the Kings of Chat Style. So if you're watching, if you're joining in the chat room, please share with your friends on Twitter. Come by, hang out in the chat, and let us know your thoughts about what we're chatting about.
Yeah, just a quick parentheses. If you are in the chat, and there's a lot of people. Chat is active right now. It's super fun. We've got Melissa, Darren, we've got Joe, Jason, JPQ. We got a whole bunch of people chatting. And if you want more people to come chat, spread the good word. Send the link out on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you share your social media stuff. Let's get more people in here. God damn it! It's the first show after all.
And if Darren Kirkby is here, that's how you know it's a good wrestling podcast, because that guy watches and listens to everything. So just pointing that out for y'all's listeners.
Thank you, Darren, for joining, man, and being active on the chat. I appreciate that.
Yes. Now, I'm sorry, Wilfred. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you were making a good point. What is it? Hashtag chat style? Is that it?
Hashtag chat style. Trending nowhere, but
fuck! I literally just spit take on my computer. I was taking a drink.
Language.
Sorry.
Oh man.
Okay, are we good? Old man Warren, are you all right?
Just do your thing. I'll make sure we don't drown here.
Okay. I want to say hi to Becky and Jake and Joe, of course, in the chats. So we brought two topics to the table this week, and we want to have a little bit of discussion on the first topic, which is going to be a new wrestling company. Now, it's mostly rumor, just off the cuff remarks by Jim Ross on the Jericho Cruise, where maybe we could maybe somebody's going to come together and eliminate all the BS and just make their own company. So that kind of got a little bit of traction. So it got us to thinking, me and Warren, and we discussed, well, yeah, fantasy booking is lots of fun. Lots of great podcasts do that. Picking the talent is almost the easy part. But what does it take to actually build a wrestling company in this modern era? You need to be able to stream. You need to be able to watch stuff on demand. You need to have a quality TV production. You see how amplified a little mic botch or audio issue can happen for NWA.
Oh my God.
And then you see something like All In, where it's like 100%. It's solid. So your production value, the people that are speaking, giving the quality, the commentary, and who's actually booking. So these are the things that I think really lends to if a company is successful or not. So that's what we're going to chat about in this first topic. Warren, do you have anything to add before we jump in?
No, that's yeah. Aside from the fact that that's it, I think there's a lot. Like Wilfred just said, there's the off the cuff remarks that Jim Ross has been talked about. There's Cody, who's been hinting at the fact that maybe he wants to transition into something else. Especially after the success of All In, and now there's rumors that he's not renewing with Ring of Honor. So, what's the deal? What's going on? So, it does bring up a lot of in in our imagination, you know, we all love wrestling so much. We all want to see it grow. We want to see our favorites get the exposure and the time to grow that we want. The showcase, the spotlight, call it what you want. So yeah, like Wilfred said, there's a lot that goes on behind. So what's required?
Well, I'll kick it off, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. So I think that if I were making a company in 2019, and this is my personal opinion, I want to hear you guys what you think of this, but I would like to start with a booker who doesn't necessarily have to be a wrestling personality. I'm a big fan of Progress Wrestling because they tell a story with a limited amount of talent that they have. And especially now, with so much talent sharing with NXT UK, NXT UK is essentially an elevated Progress Wrestling event.
Right.
And I like how Jim Smallman, the hype man, the announcer, actually lends himself to actually putting together really good storylines. You have Jenny, the queen, the Progress Women's Champion, who had her amazing battle. She won the title off of Toni Storm after a lengthy forearm injury. And then she built up her faction. So I like what Progress has done over the past 5 or 6 years. They've really stuck to character development and story building. And quite frankly, not doing what Rev Pro does. Rev Pro essentially has high marquee events, big names, but that's it. There's nothing on the undercard. There's no new guys coming through. You just have the merry-go-round of Zach Gibson, Aussie Open, and different guys going to different British organizations. But Rev Pro doesn't stand for anything other than high marquee matches. So I would want to be signing somebody who can book a story and characters from the ground up. Kristen, what do you think as far as booking what you would do with a new company? Would that be as important as I'm thinking it should be, or would your focus be somewhere else at the start?
No, I think booking is really important. And I think some of the bigger companies, when they have complaints that their talent isn't being utilized properly, like I just did, it's because their booking is subpar. And there are companies that say they tap into the audience when really they don't. And so they're just giving you what they want. And I think as far as booking goes, it's important to keep an ear out in the public and listen to what they want. I mean, you don't always have to cater to an audience, but it would be nice to at least recognize what your audience thinks about your talent, because you can try to push somebody, but if we don't want it, we don't want it.
I think it's interesting that you're bringing up listening to an audience while your avatar is Becky Lynch. I think there's something very, 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 very.
Well, that's example, like at least the most recent example, right? Like they try to turn her heel, and then they've done that with a few people, like in the last couple of months, and it didn't work.
Pipe in the booze.
Yeah, it just didn't work. So we, as a fan base, just pushed back until I think, honestly, WWE was like, all right, fine. And so now they've gotten her where she's still heelish, but we all love it. And she's like a baby. I don't even know what to call that. Heel face. I don't know.
Tweener.
Yes.
She's got. Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Everyone, just go ahead.
Everyone talk at the same time.
Chat style.
It's very obvious that Becky has, and I don't want to get off too much on Becky right now in that discussion, but she's so bad that she's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Any booking thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that she brings up listening to the audience and how that can go different ways, right? Because we've seen some good signs of what you do when you listen to your audience, like All In. Wilfred, mentioned All In and how successful that was, and that is the biggest example of listening to your audience in a wrestling show, right? Like it's got to be. You got everything you wanted. We got everything we want to see, cater to that audience. But we've seen some things with booking where it just didn't necessarily work out. Like Dean Ambrose was so incredibly hot before he got his title. He got his title reign. Everyone cooled off on him, and he got kind of boring. We're seeing the internet turn on Kenny Omega after everybody wanted him to finally beat Okada for so long. So I think it is good to bring in, like Wilfred mentioned, someone that maybe isn't in wrestling, like that is different, is from outside of the business, that can bring new storylines that aren't just formulaic, that have, you listen to the fans and then everyone cools off. Like I feel like wrestling bookers that have been there for a while, they know how to get the baby face or get the heel to the top, but they don't know how to keep them at the top or keep them hot. Becky's an anomaly right now, I think.
Yes, I agree on that front. Well, who would we put in a booking position then? Who do we consider to be like a winner as far as giving them the book and creating storylines and making sure that that the right talent is featured then in the right position?
I think that we have to not necessarily have somebody in this generation, but we need somebody who has the finger on the pulse. Mm-hmm. We need somebody who has the finger on the pulse of the pop culture, of the society, of what's happening, what's fresh, what's new. You have a wrestler in David Arquette who put his life on the line last night for a Joey Janela booked event because he's got his finger on the pulse and he's doing what he wants to do and he knows where to do it. And it doesn't have to be somebody young or fresh or new. It just needs to have somebody who knows what's going on in our society.
I was literally going to recommend David Arquette. It was like, because I watched Joey Janela's LA Confidential last night, and all of those fans there got what they wanted. And who the hell knew that David Arquette would give us what we wanted? Of all people in 2018.
Yeah.
Crazy. And now he's a bloody mess, that poor guy.
That could be a whole other show in and about itself.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point, Warren. Real quick, if you're in the YouTube chats or conversing with us on Twitter, if you have a topic that you'd like to hear us chat about or a guest that you'd like to hear for next month's episode, please tweet to us at Mr. Warren Hayes, at Wilfred Watches, and we will definitely consider it. So just real quick, wanted to get that out.
Good idea. There's also an important part I think that we need to address too is training, right? Because it's one thing to have your talent there. I know in the indies it's a little more difficult because no one is necessarily people move from organization to organization. Not all indie promotions have a performance center where they can send their talent because it's not necessarily their talent to go and train and build oneself up. But it seems to me if you're starting a new company and you want to develop, let's say, a style that will be pleasing, you'd want to get some trainers in there to make sure that your staff, that your talent gets everyone gets on the same page, but then also continues improving and working hard, right?
But they cannot necessarily be trained. Like we just interviewed Mike Quackenbush recently. And so if you guys don't know who Mike Quackenbush...
Listen to him name drop. Okay, yeah. Mr. Big Shot.
Well, okay.
Quackenbush followed me on Twitter this week, so eat it.
Oh, talk to him. He's amazing. Please do. He's great. Warren, Wilfred's talking to him soon. But Quackenbush said that,
basically I'm not that special is what you're saying.
Oh, no. Right. He started wrestling, had no formal training, and then when... they had some fallout where he ended up being this untrained trainer wrestling and teaching people at the Wrestle Factory in Fort Chikara, starting a new promotion and really not trained himself in doing some formalized training. So I feel like I don't know if maybe training is all that important because Chikara seems to be doing fine.
Well, like let's say you get a guy like you get like a Fit Finlay, right? Or a Norman Smiley. Guiding you and teaching you psychology, even when Dusty was still doing it, right? When he was still with us and was involved in NXT. I mean, you having these resources at the tips of your fingers.
I'd like to hear what Kristen thinks about the effect that Sarah Amado's had on the WWE and NXT women's divisions, because that's a transformation that has happened since the Divas time, that really most of the credit goes to Sarah Amado's training in NXT. So I think that somebody of that ilk, who's just beyond their wrestling days slightly, much like a Cassius Ohno, who's kind of near the end of his career, or somebody like William Regal, is a great fit. So I'd like to hear what Kristen thinks about that type of person as the main trainer of an organization.
Yeah, well, Sarah Del Rey has gotten, I mean, for me, I think like with any job, right? Like when you apply for a job, they want a resume, they want a list of experience. And it may not be specific training, but it's like how long have you been in this industry, and what have you done within this industry?
That's a good
What
point.
type of matches, what type of people have you fought? So when you look at Sarah and you look at just the years, or it's like over a decade of experience and all these different promotions and all these different types of fights, that's something that they need to look at. And I think it's important, honestly, for any sport to have a very rigid form of, like, this is what you need for training and this is what you need for experience. It's a job like any other job, and it's also like way more dangerous than like my job of like serving coffee to tired people. So they're obviously going to get hurt a lot more often than I would. So I think having like a very specific person like Sarah to come in with very clear qualifications, that's like super important. And she is super important to women's evolution, because it went from pulling hair and what my buddy Jeter likes to blame the fabulous Moolah
it's Moolah
for
style.
that sort of the Moolah style, and taking it to something more equal to what we see in the men's divisions. And I mean, she's not the first one to do it, but the way that she pushes real wrestling, and she's definitely important to women's evolution. Absolutely.
I think that Melissa in the YouTube chat makes a great point about somebody like Christopher Daniels, who is an absolute independent wrestling god. And the stuff that he's done, you can talk about all day. So I think names like that would be incredible. I think that's the move. And even somebody like Joey Janela is somebody who can kind of play both roles. Like we're seeing Cody Rhodes kind of putting things together and wrestling. It's an interesting time, but
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna jump in here. I gotta tell you, if I'm starting my promotion, I 100% want Cody Rhodes with me all the way. At this stage, if there's a guy there is no one right now, I do not think, who better understands what the audience wants on one end, but also how to get to the audience.
I would personally, in addition to Cody, I would definitely call in Dustin Rhodes as well.
Yeah.
Goldust. If you could bring those two minds together, and the work rate that they both have, that they can blend in and lead to a new generation. Can you imagine?
That'd be fantastic.
I mean, could you imagine if that promotion happens and Christopher Daniels is their head trainer too, though? Like,
and then let's, since we're fantasying right now, your talent scout is William Regal. That's your talent scout.
Can I just say in the chat, somebody said cheerleader Melissa, and I would like to do a shout out to cheerleader Melissa. She is the wife of my boss for Diva Dirt, and that woman has done a ton of good stuff in wrestling, and I would personally love to train under that woman. I'm sure anybody would. She's awesome. Sweet, I'm bringing up cheerleader Melissa.
Cool.
No, that's fantastic. I
Shout
just
out
want to say,
Melissa then.
that if we have this really cool company with lots of cool names behind the scenes, how are we going to display this to the world? Would we want to go to a strictly on-demand tape delayed service? Do we want to go with the live streaming? Or are we going to go with just live pay-per-views only? I think the blend is fantastic. Like Dragon Gate has live events for an upper tier of an amount, and then you have a lower tier for only on demand. I think that's a perfect way.
I actually think that the way Ring of Honor does their stuff is pretty close to perfect. I don't like that their TV episodes are so far behind, but they show special live events that are just house shows that they make feel bigger. And then they have those for free for Honor Club. They have, all the different ways that they show their product. The problem with them is they're just not putting it on the right channels, I think. But what they're doing, I think, would make Ring of Honor incredibly popular. It's just nobody knows where to find it.
Do you guys think we need television these days?
Yeah.
You think you do? We do? You do too, Kristen?
Yeah. I think if you want to, there was rumors for a while that, SmackDown and Raw were going to go to just Facebook. And, my father watches wrestling. He has no Facebook account. I think you have to have a blend if you want to reach different demographics. I mean, if you have one very specific demographic in mind, go for it. And I agree. I think Ring of Honor does have a lot of good, positive things, but I will be honest, I was trying to find where to get it on TV, and had to ask 4 people because it's on different dates and different times. And but I think the blend is really important if you want to reach more people, obviously.
And to the point about somewhat of an older generation that's not up to date with tech or computers, you have to have it on a cable channel or a broadcast channel that is recognizable, because trying to find Pop TV or or what's the other one? Access TV,
Pluto's one.
Yeah.
You think about how hard that is for somebody of your mother or father's age. That's not easy for them, and that's a huge part of the audience that watches wrestling. So you have to have it accessible to every age and every computer illiterate folk.
I really don't think television is necessary for any promotion anymore. I really, really don't. I think that there's a convergence that can happen. You can have stuff on television, have stuff on the internet, but I don't think a TV deal is necessary anymore. I think it's important for WWE because it's part of its business model, but I really and sincerely believe that indie promotions can thrive using the internet because that's where the younger audience is watching, the more savvy, the hardcore crowd. That's where we're watching, and it will and we're used to using these technologies. And the thing is that they're going to become simpler and simpler. I don't know if you guys have a Chromecast in your house, but I do. And it is the stupidest thing in the world to do. You just plug it into your TV, you open up something, and you stream it directly onto your television. So, and I even got my 74-year-old mother to use it. So that's how simple it is. I really don't think a TV deal is all that important anymore. I really and honestly don't. I think a streaming service is essential, whether it's your own streaming service or partnering up with other existing services. I think that's critical, and I believe that that holding your monthly events behind a paywall is also critical. I think that's a really a monthly super card, pay-per-view, call it what you want. I think that's really, really important.
Real quick, I'm going to take a pause in the action to say that unlike PWG, we give this to you now and we chat with you right now, live, free, no nonsense in the chat. So
it's a lot of nonsense, but
you don't have to wait 3 months for this product to come out on a DVD format. You can chat with us right now, live, in the YouTube chat, on Twitter. We're everywhere. So real quick, if you do want to follow along, hashtag chat style. Follow Warren at Mr. Warren Hayes myself at Wilford Watches. We will give you all the latest information about the Kings of Chat Style upcoming episodes next month, upcoming guests, topics which we're open to hear about, and we're very happy to hear recommendations. We have a lot of names that are in the hat that we want to work with in the future. Some of those might be listening to us right now.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? So yeah, get involved with us online. Please follow at Smark to Death, where Anthony can be found. And Kristen, what is your hashtag? I'm sorry, or your handle? Here it is.
My handle is my name. It's super hard.
At Kristen
Ashly.
Ashly.
With
Yeah.
no E in that, Ashley.
No E.
No E. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna tweet like crazy. So if we bother you, just mute us. Don't block us. We're just really passionate. We love.
Please don't block us.
Please don't block us.
Please don't.
So we have another topic that we wanted to run by you guys and hear about. And how can we say this lightly? I'm not a big Chuck E. fan. I'm not the biggest Chuck E. T. fan. I don't know why. I think he's just.
Why are we leading in with Chuck E. T?
I just want to get this off my chest.
He just has to say it once an episode, I feel like.
Yes.
It's his plug.
But I love Yano of New Japan. So what is it about comedy wrestling or comedy antics, or what is it about comedy wrestling that it has people so divided at times? Because we see it in different organizations and it's utilized at different time periods. Yano might have a 10-minute match, which is fantastic, but then you might see a 3-hour Raw where it's just a bunch of joking around. So I want to hear you guys' input about comedy wrestling and comedy acts. Is it good? Is it bad? Are there aspects that you enjoy or do not enjoy? Or am I alone on this boat with Chuck E. T?
Well, I'm pretty new. I'll jump in. Don't worry. I'm pretty new to comedy wrestling, and I mean, I've heard it. We have like a chat channel for Daily DDT, and I've heard a lot of people bring it up. And so prior to this podcast, I wanted to sound smarter than I am. So I went and researched on the topic. Laura over at Daily DDT is like fantastic. I just love Laura. She's gonna help out Diva Dirt in the future, and she's so smart. And she's got a piece on comedy wrestling and the art of it. And so I looked up Colt Cabana. Mm-hmm. And there was a match I watched within that article, him and Grant, and I was really entertained. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had like some preconceived notions going in that it was gonna be just like sad and unprofessional, and it was really entertaining. I mean, they're tearing down that fourth wall, and you get involved in it because you're not like, I mean, it's still wrestling, there's still moves, but you're not just kind of, sitting idle waiting for the win. You're in it, and I really liked it. I thought it was entertaining.
What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with comedy wrestling. It just kind of depends on how far it goes, I guess. Like I think if the wrestlers are talented technically, and you get a nice blend of like some pretty solid wrestling, but with some comedy spots, I think that's fine. I think some promotions overkill it. Like I feel like Ring of Honor leans a little too hard into comedy sometimes. Like we'll see those ridiculous spots where they have multi-man matches already, which are difficult to watch at times, and then we have a string of men doing a sharpshooter to each other, which is just not funny, and it plays too much on the other side. I think
I've seen that, and it frightens me because it reminds me of the Human Centipede movies.
Oh no! Or like that moment in BTE.
Those?
I have watched those.
Gross.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because
Look,
it's there. Because
look,
it's there.
What me and Warren do on Sundays.
Yeah,
really none of your business.
Listen, I'm like horror fan number one. I live on horror movies. I watch horror movies Saturday at 9 a.m. I will not watch The Human Centipede.
Listen,
That's just-
I think in horror, I think the ass to mouth subgenre is solely
Oh my.
underrepresented.
we don't need to talk about that subgenre
All right.
at all.
Woo.
But
Well,
I
Well,
get
it is
I get
too
where you're
early.
coming from, Anthony, because I have the I'm pretty much on the same idea. Like, I'm a big fan of Toru Yano. He's my spirit animal. I love what he does. And what I I think when comedy wrestling works the best is when it serves as just a palate cleanser, a refresher. His work in the G1 this year was always a blast, you know, because you had the matches, then all of a sudden Toru comes, and everyone he wrestled in the G1 just seemed to be in on it, was ready to have a good time, understood what the match was about, and I always look forward to his matches in his block every single time. But then again, I mentioned it earlier, you go back to 1994 at the Survivor Series where you have Doink and Clowns Are Us versus Jerry the King Lawler and his Little People Kings. And the match lasts 15 freaking minutes.
See, I think Hurricane Helms is a really good example of a comedy
Yes.
wrestler, right? Like, Hurricane Helms is actually a really damn good wrestler, but he's a superhero, and it's silly, but it works because it makes sense, and like he's treated seriously enough with his comedy gimmick. She's just funny, and Shane Helms is the best.
And I think, you know, you'd probably, maybe this is a bit not controversial, but maybe some people haven't realized, but you know, Broken Matt Hardy TNA was low key comedy, right?
Was that low key?
Or was it full blown? Because
I think
people were taking it
I-
seriously. No, but the difference between, let's say, Santino Marella and Broken Matt, Santino Marella, everyone was just like dismissing it as comedy, right? Oh, okay, this is for the ha-has. But Matt Hardy, everyone was legit into it. I don't know if you came up to someone and say, "Oh, Broken Matt Hardy's a comedy act," they'd be like, "No, it's not." But yeah, it kind of is.
I would definitely put the Hardys kind of broken universe into that realm because it was so ridiculous that I actually went out of my way to try to find what channel it was going to be on when they had that match, and it was the dumbest thing I ever watched, but it was comedic. It was funny. But my thing with comedy wrestling is that I like it in small doses.
Yes.
Like I like my Yano in like 10-minute tops. Like anything beyond that is pushing it. And I want to throw something out the window. And Chucky T
Oh man,
is a guy who
Oh,
he is a guy, correct?
he
Segue.
seems like a great gentleman, I'm sure.
He's patting himself. Keep going.
But a life of comedy is tragic. I don't know.
Oh my.
what? No.
Oh, okay, but here's something I want to throw in there. Like I don't know if people are watching on YouTube right now. We have a little slideshow of pictures, and I have Jim Cornette right in this slideshow here. Now don't suggest. Oh come on! And Jim Cornette is in here not because Jim Cornette is a comedy guy, but as you know, Jim Cornette loathes comedy and wrestling. He has said on record multiple times that comedy wrestling will never draw. There's no reason for doing it. And let's say, if we consider, let's say, Kenny Omega fighting a blow-up doll being a comedy moment, well, in his mind, it's killing the business. I'd like to hear, and there are lots of people, let's be frank, who share that same opinion as dear Mr. Cornette does. For the record, I listen to his podcast, and I enjoy his historical takes and his storytelling from the territory days. I think it's fantastic. I think as far as a guy, as his opinion in 21st century wrestling goes, I don't think he has much to contribute. That's just me. But just to say that, I don't readily crap on the guy. I actually enjoy him. But I think that his opinions on, as far as comedy wrestling goes, maybe a little far off. I don't know what you guys think.
He's a dunce.
Yeah, wrestlers that have their own cereal boxes will never draw, ever.
Or give out
Never.
pancakes.
Or play trombones or dance or call things booty. Yeah, that definitely isn't a
They'll
draw.
never sell merch.
Never.
No.
Never.
Sarcasm.
Just
I
get-
remember when I first started watching The New Day, how they had that weird like preachy gimmick going on with the choir, and they were so easy to hate.
But this is
so
very
annoying.
interesting, though, that we bring up the New Day as a comedy act, because their matches are not comedy matches. These guys go.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think WWE doesn't really do comedy matches, but I like when they actually have fun with their gimmicks and make it fun. I mean, I'll take a pancake to the face. I'm okay with that. I love the New Day.
Hashtag pancake.
Hashtag pancake to the face. Bring it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with comedy wrestling whatsoever. The New Day is a comedy gimmick, but they have serious matches. WWE does food fight matches every single holiday, and people watch them. They watch those shows, millions of people. So I don't agree with them.
And there's always one person in the Royal Rumble who is eliminated goofily, whether it be Chris Hawkins, Kurt Hawkins, or whoever, someone.
Or
Naomi.
R-Truth.
R-Truth.
Ladder match or something, and he comes out. Didn't he do that? He came out to a Rumble match, and he thought it was a ladder match or something. Or no, the other way around.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
He said "my bad" at one point.
He's good for that. I love watching R-Truth. Oh, he's so funny to me.
But why do you think that? And I'm asking my guests here, Wilfred, because you're going to just talk about Chuck E. T again. Why do you think? Why do you guys think that there's a rabid portion of the fan base that is completely against, goofiness in the ring, and the minute they see it, the killing the business, hashtag killing the business appears, and so on and so forth? Why do you think there's such opposition to something which ultimately is so harmless?
I think people take themselves too seriously. I mean, the wrestling as a sport is serious. I mean, there are clear dangers to the sport, but I think it's just those fans that just take the whole situation too seriously.
I think that happens with. I just want to add to that real quick. I think that happens to a niche product of any genre or environment. If you like this one very, very specific genre of something, and wrestling is very niche. I mean, when you say wrestling, people will say Hulk Hogan, who's that John Cena guy, or they'll name off guys from the 80s or 90s. So it's a very niche thing. And I think that a lot of folks of a certain age group or generation, they get very, very needy and very defensive about their product. Just like their bands that they loved when they were a teenager, it's their band and they can't get too big because it's my thing. And I think there's a lot of aggressive, especially with Twitter now, that it gets a little out of hand and the bandwagon mentality jumps on. So it's very easy to hate on something. Now, I don't hate comedy wrestling. I just
hate
don't
Chuck E. T.
No, I don't hate it. I would just prefer it in smaller doses. That's all.
I agree with both of you. I think that people have in their heads a way that wrestling's supposed to be, especially if they're hardcore fans or maybe puro fans, that just want wrestling to be treated as a sport. Like they want to go back in time where the NWA was king and everything Jim Cornette says is the truth. And that, big guys fought each other and we all believed it. But I think it's important that comedy wrestling exists because kayfabe is dead. Like we know these guys are other people.
Right.
We know that they exist as humans. And the reason the guys in the elite are so over with everyone is because they dabble in comedy because we know who they are. And I think comedy wrestling gives people a chance to kind of show a lighter side of themselves and helps audiences relate to it. So I guess it just depends on how seriously you want to treat this thing we all love.
and that's the thing, and this is the one thing that boggles my mind when people start talking about killing the business. The the it would be impossible. In 2018, it would be impossible for any promotion to maintain any type of kayfabe, right? If Vince McMahon hadn't done that infamous promo back in the late 90s where he flat out said wrestling is fake and really decided to, okay, let's just pull the veil back, we're done. If he hadn't done it, it would have happened early in the 2000s, because the minute that everyone's had access to Twitter, well, maybe the mid 2000s, Twitter, smartphones, it would have been impossible to keep the veil up. And to me, one of the things that's most interesting about comedy wrestling these days is how much it's an acceptance of this new reality, you know, of, well, everyone knows that we're not beating on each other for realsies, that this is predetermined, it's scripted, so might as well just have a little fun with it. And sometimes you have the impression that it just does it. It's a there's something very cathartic for the wrestlers doing it as well, just to have like a goof off moment where they don't have to be overly I don't want to say serious, but I'll use the word serious.
Well, and I think it's all a part of realizing the talent that you have and the talents that they have, and then utilizing those talents again. So like, I think back to a ladder match, like pre-show, like pre-match, and it was like Jericho and Dean Ambrose and Kevin Owens, and it was this like, and like Cesaro was there. It's this banter. And I remember like looking at my brother, like, they need to start a show with these guys, because it was just so hilarious. And I think they tapped into their talents and just used it. I don't think everyone's good for mic work in that manner. And so not everyone can be comedic, but if you have the right talent, you might as well use it.
You know, on the topic of making a show out of something, like the complete opposite of comedy and banter would be something that I saw before we went on air this morning, was a WWE produced video that's about 6.5 minutes long of Becky Lynch, the day that she got the information about her face being broke.
When the news broke her that her face was broke.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was so well produced that I just want to go totally off topic just a real quick second, that something very serious where you peel the curtain back a little bit and you get into right in their face when they're going through something dramatic like that. There's nothing more dramatic and engaging than a little video like that. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was just jaw-dropping just to be with her in that moment when she was talking about that with her mom on the phone. It was outstanding.
Yeah, WWE does a great job with those like they're in this reality era right now, and when they do these kind of segments, or like the Dean Ambrose thing that's coming out tomorrow night, that's probably going to be really good too. The Kevin Owens story was, the Finn Balor stuff is like completely off topic, but WWE has the best production value when it comes to that stuff. It's incredibly interesting and like just awesome, good quality stuff.
Well, I think it's important to note that she's actually a trained actress. She's gone to acting school, and so again, it's just realizing their talents and then putting them to good use.
Melissa in the chat talking about comedy says comedy is also very nuanced. You can have a slapstick match and a food fight to a hardcore match, and hitting someone with a poster that has a stop sign hidden in it, you know, both have comedy elements, and that's interesting as well, because sometimes, you know, when you watching hardcore matches that have a lot of toys in it, sometimes you're like, what? He just hit him with a floor tile? You know, it's like there's
It's hilarious.
And at some point, you know, the cookie sheets, I'm sure, are ribs every time, because
dear God,
it's ridiculous. But then again, it won't be perceived necessarily as comedy. Like, where is this line between comedy, what's considered comedy, and what isn't? Ooh, that's a good one I just dropped there on you, didn't I?
Wow.
You're your biggest fan, Warren.
You've come a long way.
I'm gonna jump out here. I got 2 minutes of tapping myself on the back here to do.
So you mean what is the line between like what we perceive as comedy and what isn't?
Yeah.
I think if you get into the situation where we need to perceive whether it's comedy or not, that's the intention, is for you just to look at it and decide how you feel. Like I don't think there's a right or wrong if it's supposed to be like, if it's done that way and it's done vague, then it's supposed to be funny or serious to different demographics viewing the product, I think. If that makes sense.
It does.
I just don't commit to an answer, basically.
I mean, I think we're all in this special moment where Warren peaked, and it's a special.
Yeah, that's exactly it too.
It's
I
all,
think
it was good.
all downhill from
Human
here.
centipede.
It is
Yeah.
literally all downhill from here, because the salt to my pepper just peaked.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh man, we need a reaction vid for Warren's peaking moments. He just popped the chat room, guys. Holy!
I don't know what to say to that. Not touching it.
So overall, guys, if we want to wrap this one up,
Absolutely good timing to wrap this up.
what? How about a quick word? Comedy wrestling, for or against? You can't straddle this one. Kristen.
I'm for it. I like it.
Anthony.
I'm for it, especially Chuck E. T.
You son of a bitch.
And Wilfred, what about you?
If we had to go either one extreme to the other, I would say against.
Oh.
Chuck E. T is ruining everything for you.
I would rather have my Hiroki Goto instead of having Yano. I would pick Goto over Yano.
Oh my God. We are going to have such
Never.
a talk after the show.
You're putting me on the spot where I have to choose an extreme side. And,
Wrestling hipster,
You
Will
are.
Clinton.
You are a wrestling hipster.
hashtag
That's
wrestling
it.
hipster.
I don't know if you guys noticed. I don't know if Wilfred Watches has an Instagram, right? And occasionally Wilfred does post pictures of himself in his merch, which you should go buy, by the way. Do you want
You
to
wear
plug
your
your
own
merch?
merch?
Are we, is this the moment where I soapbox? Is
Well,
this?
okay, well, just before you soapbox, then we'll get into the merch. It'll be a good segue. But there's one thing that I'd like you all to do. Go subscribe to his Instagram. Then let me know if you think Wilfred Watches looks like Trent Seven or not.
He does.
He does, right?
Yep.
I was watching NXT UK last night, and Seven was wrestling, and at some point I was like, oh my God, he looks like Wilfred.
Mm-hmm.
Wilfred looks like him, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the other way around.
So we're going to wrap up the show here. Wilfred has got
wrap it up.
We're going to wrap everything up here. I want to thank both Anthony Suter and Kristen Ashly for joining us. Kristen, one last time for all the folks listening live and in the future, where can they find you on social media? Where can they find your projects and wonderful writing? Let them know. Go.
Oh, okay. Twitter at Kristen Ashly and Diva Dirt at Diva Dirt. You can find my stuff everywhere. I'm everywhere. You can't get rid of me. Diva Dirt, Fightful sometimes when Sean lets me, and Daily DDT because Joe loves me there. So look out for me.
There you go. Anthony, what about you?
So you can follow us on Twitter at Smark2Death, T-O, Smark2Death. We are available everywhere you get podcasts, so iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, all that good stuff. We will be live tonight on YouTube and Twitch after Survivor Series and after NXT TakeOver War Games, so come hang out with us. And if you would like to buy a shirt, prowrestlingtees.com/Smark2Death.
And they're quality shirts, folks. I can attest to it. Quality shirts.
They really are. I got myself a Smart to Death tee as well to support my brother Anthony. And real quick, You can follow me at Wilford Watches, of course. But the reason that we're talking about merch, the reason we're talking about shirts and digital tip jar and all that good stuff is because we do this on our free time. We do this because we absolutely just love pro wrestling. Whether my mindset's in Japan or Kristen's is in women's wrestling or Anthony and Warren's in WWE and NXT, we all love professional wrestling together, and we like to talk about it when we're not at work or going to school. So any way that you can support us back, it really means the world to us because we do this out of our own pockets, except for Warren. So if you want to grab a tee, the prowrestlingtees.com has really good deals coming up starting this Tuesday for Black Friday. So you can go to prowrestlingtees.com/WilfordWatches. I have some cool designs on there as well. prowrestlingtees.com/SmarkToDeath. They've got some awesome tees. And yeah, Warren, where can we find you if we're not already following your amazing recap show Monday and Tuesday? Where can we find you?
Well, basically, youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes. That's where actually you're watching this video right now. So if you're here, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Warren Hayes. You can find me on Fightful Select, which is Fightful.com's premium service. I do retro reviews and weekly NXT 205 Live, NXT UK recaps there as well. So you go over to Fightful, you sign up for Fightful Select as low as $5 a month, and you get all the Warren Hayes buffet you can stand to stomach.
We are going to also upload this as an audio format.
Yes. This is
will be on
guys.
the Wilford Watches podcast feed, which will be going up shortly this afternoon. So if you can type in Wilford Watches into any podcast platform, you'll have the audio replay of this lovely chat that we had. So please subscribe and hang out and check out the cool shows that I have coming up as well, and subscribe to Warren's YouTube as well. Next month, we will have another The Kings of Chat Style. So send us your topic ideas, your guest recommendations, and we will definitely consider those.
I'd say this wasn't a bad first show.
I think it's going to be your best show.
Yeah, I think so.
I think you've officially peaked as a podcast. You're welcome. I'm trying to be healed today, and it's not working, but I got my little bit in. So
Thank you, Mick Foley, for the cheap pop. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But no, I think this was pretty good, and it's only going to get even more awesome as we go on. And and this is crucial, guys. Yes, we do this live on YouTube, but Wilfred is hosting all of the audio on the podcast side. So if you like to listen to this in your car, on the go,
in the bathtub,
anyway, watching Human Centipede, just
Oh.
put that on.
No, don't do that. We do not. No.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys invited me. And like for all of you listeners, I talk to Warren and Wilfred daily. These guys are fantastic. Support all of their stuff. Scream it from the mountaintops. And yeah, do all that good stuff because they're great guys.
Well, thank you very much for putting us over. That's very sweet. But both Kristen and Anthony, they're fantastic, and you should go follow them. If you're not already, you should support them in any way you can. And we are going to wrap this up, guys, gals, everyone. Wilfred, hope you have a good week.
Thanks, bud.
And I hope everyone has a good week as well. We shall see you all very, very soon. And in the meantime,